You are very welcome once again to this introductory meeting of writing research. So today we are going to be focusing on how to write a research topic. By the end of this module, you should have learned how to generate a genuine research topic, which your supervisor and your professor will just be so happy with. So my name is Alan from Professional Writers, where we specialize in writing all kinds of documents, including research proposals, dissertations, business plans, grant proposals, annual reports, NGO monthly reports, CVs and resumes, company profiles, all kinds of professional documents. So today we shall be focusing on how we write a research topic. So now I'm going to just share my screen so you can see how a research topic is generated. So specifically for today, we are going to be focusing on how we write a topic, objectives, research questions, and generating hypotheses. So I understand that there are many levels of academic levels that are here. So we have those ones in undergraduate and those ones in postgraduate. So I'm going to try to go through and bend the topics on how they can still fit in both undergrad and how they can fit in postgrad. Okay, so what is academic research? If someone is asked, what is academic research, for instance? So you'll see that research is a very wide topic. And by definition, research is to find out. That is the only thing it means, to find out something. So now what we want to ask is, what exactly are we finding out? In general terms, you'll see that research can be used to find out about any problem that the community might be facing. But in academia, much of the reason as to why we want students to do research is to give them a general understanding of trying to find new information that is of great value to the community. So you'll see that an academic research is a systematic process of studying a research problem or a situation. So it is an ideal that we use in academia to help students discuss the problems that they could face in their lives, maybe at school, or the problems that are faced by other people elsewhere. So you'll see that it is a systematic process of studying a research problem or situation, okay? So now, normally an academic research document will contain 5 chapters. So in the 5 chapters, you'll see that it will contain the introduction, and this is the chapter 1. And in most cases, the introduction, you see that it will have the background, the problem statement, your objectives, your hypothesis, your research questions, the conceptual framework, the justification, the significance of the study. And then we shall go to the second chapter, which is normally called the literature review. And in the literature review, it means that this is where we talk about works that have been done by other people in relationship to our study. And then we shall go to the methodology that talks about the methods which you're going to use, like in data collection, data analysis. And then you go to the results section that talks about the results that you got in your study. And then you go to the discussion. So the discussion, you discuss the results in relationship to the literature review. So in other universities, you'll see that they break down the discussion and get 2 topics, two sections. One which they call the discussion, and another they call it the conclusion and summary of the research. So what is a research topic? So a research topic is that focused subject of investigation that you are focusing on as a researcher. So it is going to guide scholarly inquiry, and it is also going to guide analysis in a very specific field. Take a look at an example, the impact of employee motivation on performance. So this person wants to think that maybe if employees are motivated, their performance might be better, or it might be worse, or I don't know. So we want to understand their impact. That's why they called it an impact. So what is a research objective? A research objective is a concise statement that defines a specific goal or aim that the study wants to find out. So take a look at our research topic, the impact of employee motivation on performance. See? So now, a research objective will go ahead and become very specific on what we want to find out. So in research objectives, there are two types. We have what we call a general objective, and the general objective is always derived from the topic. So if you say that the topic is the impact of employee motivation on performance, so our general objective will be to determine the impact of employee performance or employee motivation on performance. So as I said, the topic is impact of employee motivation on performance. Then the objective will be to determine the impact employee motivation on performance. I think that makes sense. So that is the general objective. But we can still go ahead and get what we call a specific objective. So a specific objective is a breakdown of the general objective. So for instance, if we are saying to determine the impact of employee motivation, so we can look into what is employee motivation. So we divide employee motivation into manageable parts. For instance, we could say employees are motivated by rewards. So we could say, what is the impact of employee rewards on performance? So that is a specific objective. We have broken down employee motivation to things like, because employees can be motivated with things like rewards, things like training, things like open communication. So if we study the impact of each of these on performance, those are our specific objectives. But before we move any further in creating a research topic, every student must understand some basics. And these are the basics that are always present in your research defense vivals. So an academic research is generally broken down into two parts. So your study can either be observational or your study can be experimental. So what is an observational study? So an observational study is when you, the researcher, you're just going to stand aside and observe the events as they move, and you're just going to record them. So your role is to observe and record. That's it. In an experimental study, your job as a researcher is to implement an intervention or an experiment, and then you study the results of that experiment. For instance, you could say that what is the impact of employee motivation on performance? So when I come to a company and I want to do that topic, I need to study the existing employee motivation strategies that the company has set forward. That is an observational study. But if I am doing an experimental study, then I am going as a researcher to implement or to put up a new motivation strategy. For instance, we could say that as a researcher, we are going to bring about employee rewards. And then we see how the reward system is going to change the performance of the employees. Okay. But you'll notice that experimental studies take time, because when you create an intervention as a researcher, you need to give it time to study how it is going to improve or change the practice that you want to change. So in most of the academic researches, we do observational studies because you are at school for a limited period of time and you might not have time to wait a lot of interventions to happen. So now you look at observational study. An observational study can further be broken down into a descriptive study and an analytical study. So a descriptive study is when you, the researcher, you are just going to look at a research topic and describe the distribution of a specific phenomena. So for instance, if you're saying, I want to understand the factors that are contributing to malaria in a community, all you're going to do is go and do a study and ask people around, and you get those factors. So that is a descriptive study. You're going to be describing the events as they occur. In an analytical study is also an observational study, but in this study, the researcher is comparing at least two variables specifically. For instance, if we are saying we want to understand employee motivation and performance. So we only want to understand employee motivation and performance. It is as opposed when I say factors contributing to poor performance in a company. So if I say factors contributing to poor performance in a company, motivation can just be one of them. So if I say factors contributing to poor performance in a company, for instance, then that study is going to be a descriptive study. But if I say the effect of employee motivation on performance, then that study is going to be an analytical study because I am going to compare two specific variables. And then we can still subdivide academic research by how many times we are going to interact with our respondents or our participants. So we could decide to interact with our participants only once at a single occasion. And we call that study a cross-sectional study because we are going to interact with these people only at a single occasion. If the study needs us to interact with these respondents for more than one occasion, we call it a longitudinal study. So in a longitudinal study, you're going to interact with the respondents more than once. So for instance, in a longitudinal study, you could say, I am going to ask you questions today, and then I'll come back next month and again ask you other questions to see if you either understood what we taught or not. So you can also see that we have what we call a quantitative and a qualitative study. So a qualitative study is when you're going to collect data using themes, while a quantitative study is when you're going to collect data numerically using numbers. We shall understand these as we go on. So a longitudinal study can also be divided into two. We can have what we call a retrospective study. That is when you're studying past events, past and present events. So this is always important, for instance, when you're doing, when you're dealing with secondary data, and then you go and find maybe the patient, if for instance, you're studying factors that contribute to malaria in a community, you could go to the hospital and get files of those patients who had the malaria. And then you can review them and see if there are any factors that are related. Maybe these people could be coming from a specific area which is infested with this malaria. Then the prospective study is when we are studying future events. So in future events, we could have an assumption and then predispose our respondents to a specific situation and then come back and study them later on. We also have what we call a case control study. So a case control study is an observational, retrospective analytical study. So I'll not explain this much, but we shall see it as we go ahead. So what is a research question? So a research question is also derived from a research topic. So for instance, our topic that we've been dealing with, the impact of employee motivation on their performance. Our research question could be, what is the impact of employee motivation on performance? So if we have specific objectives, we can go ahead and ask a question for each specific objective. For instance, if we had chosen that one of our forms of employee motivation is employee reward, maybe employee financial reward, we could say, what is the impact of employee financial rewards on performance, on their performance, okay? Then the next thing we want to look at is the hypothesis. And this is a very important section in your research. So a research hypothesis is a specific testable statement that proposes a relationship between variables. We shall understand variables in a short while. So now, I could say that a research hypothesis is more of an assumption. So as a researcher, you could have an assumption. For instance, your assumption could be that if employees are motivated, their performance could improve. That is just an assumption because you could motivate them and still their performance will not improve. So that is an assumption. I could also assume and say, maybe even if you motivate employees, their performance will not change. Or I could still say that there is no association between employee motivation and performance, because employees who are motivated and employees who are not motivated, they still perform in the same way. So all those are assumptions. So they are what we are going to call a hypothesis, but we are going to systematically divide this into two. We have what we call a null hypothesis. This is where you, the researcher, you are assuming that there is no association between your variables. And this is what we always want to do, because initially when we are starting with research, we do not want to assume the end results. Otherwise, then we shall be biased. If we are going into a research and we are assuming that all the employees that are motivated are going to perform better, that is not good. We want to go and say, what is the relationship between employee motivation and performance, such that we are not biased. We act as referees, we are intermediate people. Then an alternative hypothesis is where you are assuming a relationship. Maybe if you say higher levels of employee motivation are positively associated with improved performance. So that is a what? An alternative hypothesis. So we want to look at qualities of a good topic. A good topic has to be very concise and short. It should not be a very long topic. It should be short and straight to the point. The next thing, it should not be ambiguous. So an ambiguous topic is when you use words that can have different meanings, such that when someone reads it, they have to ask you, what did you mean here? So we need to use words that are very clear and straight to the point. And then the other thing, it has to be very feasible. I have seen students who say, I am going to do this study in the whole city. Then you ask them, how are you going to manage to study the entire city? Because the city is big, you might not have the time and the resources to study the entire city. So you have to choose an area that is manageable. So it should have clear objectives right within the topic, Then it should be significant to the study. You don't just get a topic that is not going to add new knowledge. And then it should also contribute to new knowledge. Okay, so what are the major contents of a research topic? So a research topic must have variables. So a variable is a characteristic of interest. So it must have both the dependent and the independent variables very visible and clear in the topic. Then the next thing is it should show our study population. For instance, in the topic that we've been dealing with, employee motivation. So our study population is employees. That is our study population. It should also show our study area. You'll see that the topic that we have been using does not have a study area. So we need to be specific and say, maybe we are going to conduct this study in a specific company. Maybe we are going to conduct it at Coca-Cola Company Limited. Yes. So variables. We have been saying this word variables, variables, variables. What exactly does this word mean? So a variable is a characteristic of interest. So you'll see that in research, we have what we call an independent variable and a dependent variable. An independent variable is always what we call a manipulator variable. This is what is going to cause the result. In our case, we have employee motivation. So we can say that when employees are motivated, something will happen. If they are not motivated, something will happen. That is an independent variable. So the effect of employee motivation is going to be seen on the dependent variable, in this case, which is performance. So we shall say that employee motivation is going to impact employee motivation is going to impact employee performance. So the dependent variable is also called the outcome variable. So make sure your topic has both the independent and the dependent variable very clear. Let's take a review at some of the research topics. I just picked this from one of those that we are working on here at Professional Writers. So in business, you can see that, for instance, electronic procurement strategies and their performance and the performance of public entities in Uganda. So you can see that electronic procurement strategies are the independent variables. And then the performance of public entities is the dependent variables. And then a case of Ministry of Water and Environment, that is the study area. So our topic has the variables, our topic has the population, and our topic has the the study area. So electronic procurement strategies and performance of public entities. So our focus is going to be on public entities. So management functions and employee performance. So we have employees as our population. We have management functions, as the independent variable, and we have performance as the dependent variable, and we have Letsego Uganda Limited as study area. The same thing happens with this one, organizational retention strategies and performance. So you'll see that we have organizational retention strategies as the independent variable, and then performance as the dependent variable. So those are just examples. I also chose some examples in healthcare. Experiences of patients diagnosed with breast cancer. You'll see that now the way we have phrased this topic is a bit different. So experiences of patients diagnosed with breast cancer at Mulago National Referral Hospital. So this is a bit different. So you'll see that what we want to understand are the experiences, and that is our dependent variable. What we want, what is causing the experiences is diagnosis with breast cancer, because you're diagnosed with breast cancer, and then you're going to get all those bad experiences that you can get. Then you can look at the impact of educational interventions on prevention of mother-to-child transmission. So educational interventions and then prevention of mother-to-child transmissions. So I am trying to explain the variable, and I think you're trying to pick. So in your topic, make sure your variables are very, very clear. You have the variables, you have the study area, you have the study population, all there. So the steps of choosing a research topic: one, we will first identify the problem. So the problem is identified in the area. For instance, employees are not performing well in this company. That is a problem. So identify the group of people that are affected by the problem: employees. Identify possible causes, predisposing factors of the problem. This one is going to help you get the independent variable. So if you say that maybe they're not performing very well because they're not motivated, so that could be a possible cause. And then you define the approach which you want to use to tackle the research. So the approach is what we have been talking about. Are you going to do a qualitative study or quantitative study, an observational study or an interventional study, a descriptive study or an analytical study? So they all come like that. So now let's look at common topic styles with their objectives and hypotheses. So you'll see that one of the topics we looked at earlier, electronic procurement strategies and perceived performance of public entities in Uganda. So you'll see that in the study objectives, we are going to break down the independent variable into at least 3 manageable, manageable topics or manageable sections. So you'll see that e-tendering, electronic tendering, is a section that has been broken down from electronic procurement. So in electronic procurement, there is e-tendering, there is e-sourcing, there is e-ordering. E means electronic. So electronic tendering, electronic sourcing, and electronic ordering. These are all events that happen while you're doing electronic procurement. So when you're doing a specific objective, we are going to be studying the independent effect of each on performance. So we study the independent effect of e-tendering on performance, e-sourcing on performance, e-ordering on performance. See? And then we shall do the same thing with the research questions. So the research questions, we are just going to reformulate our objectives. So if we have said we want to assess the relationship between e-tendering and performance, we are going to say, what is the relationship between e-tendering strategies and performance? So when we come to our hypothesis, here we can choose to either have an alternative hypothesis or a null hypothesis. So in a hypothesis, we shall say there is a significant positive relationship between e-tendering and performance. So that is an alternative hypothesis, because as a researcher, we think that there is a significant relationship between e-tendering and performance. So when we do the study, we are going to either prove or refute the hypothesis. We shall either find out if the hypothesis is true or it is not true. The other thing, common topic style, the other thing we can look at, examine the influence of leadership styles on organizational performance. Still, we are going to divide our independent variable, which is leadership styles, into the various leadership styles. We shall have transformational leadership style, transactional leadership style, and laissez-faire leadership style that we are going to be relating with the performance of our company. So still we shall have our objectives, our questions, and hypotheses. I think it makes a lot of sense there. Okay, with that knowledge, let's discuss some of these topics. And your job is to look at the topic and find out if it is well a good topic or not a good topic. The first one, lived experiences of nurses stationed at the emergency department of Kenyatta National Referral Hospital in Kenya. What do you think? So this topic is studying lived experiences. Now, every time you see a topic studying lived experiences, that is going to be a qualitative topic because experiences cannot be counted. You cannot measure experiences in numbers. So that means you're going to have a qualitative study there. So if you're going to do this topic and you're going to study experiences, you're going to have a qualitative study. So now we are going to say experiences of nurses stationed at the emergency department. The problem I see with this topic is that the nurses at the emergency department can be so many in number. So if the nurses are so many in number, you're going to be forced to do random sampling. We shall talk about sampling later. But random sampling is when you have the entire group and then you just sample a few of them. So this is going to give you a very large number of nurses, and yet you're doing a qualitative study. Yet in qualitative studies, we only have a few respondents. So that means that the sampling style and the dependent variable cannot merge this topic. Therefore, you cannot do this topic like this. If you want to do this topic, then you have to change this dependent variable. So if you're doing experiences, you need to study a smaller number of people. For instance, if you're doing experiences of cancer patients with maybe experiences of cancer patients in stage 4 with a specific cancer, maybe suffering maybe from breast cancer. So that number is not very many, even in the whole hospital. So you can easily do purposive sampling and get your number there. Then let's look at the second topic, the effects of employee empowerment on job satisfaction. What do you think of this topic? Employee empowerment on job satisfaction. So we have our independent variable, we have our dependent variable, we have our study group employees, and then we have our study area in Ghana. So that topic is okay. Then let's look at this style of topic, factors associated with the increasing cases of teenage pregnancies. So you have that you see that this topic is focusing on factors that cause increasing cases of teenage pregnancies. So increasing cases of teenage pregnancies is your dependent variable. The problem with this topic is that it does not have a direct independent variable. You're going to be studying all the factors. So that means that this topic is going to be a descriptive study. If you had only associated teenage pregnancies on a single thing, maybe if you say, for instance, maybe school dropout, say school dropout and teenage pregnancies, or the impact of school dropout on teenage pregnancies. That would be an analytical study. It would have the independent variable. But if you say factors associated with increasing cases of teenage pregnancies, you're not specific. So even school dropout can just be one of them. So this topic, if you're doing a postgraduate research study, please don't do this topic because we want you to do at least an analytical study. But if you're doing an undergraduate, this can be okay. So you can just study everything. Then you can see a topic like knowledge, attitude, and practices of adolescents towards drug abuse. So when you look at this topic, drug abuse is your dependent variable. You have the study area in a school in Nigeria, and then you have the participants who are adolescents. So you will see that in this topic, you already tie yourself on these three as your objectives: the knowledge, the attitude, and the practices as your objectives. Okay, let's continue and see one more topic, a few more topics. The performance of public servants in Nigerian government. So this topic has the dependent variable performance of public servants, but it doesn't have an independent variable. It has the study area, it has the study participants, but we don't have an independent variable. So this topic cannot be a good topic. The impact of sensitization on improvement of hygiene. So this topic is good, but we have to define exactly who is doing the sensitization. Is it you, the researcher? If it is you, the researcher, then this topic is going to become an intervention or an experimental study. Because if you come and say you're going to do the sensitization yourself, then it means that we need to give it time to see if the sensitization you did has actually yielded results. Okay? So if the sensitization is already done, maybe by other government institutions or programs, then you can go ahead and do an analytical study that is studying the sensitization that has already been done in government or by other stakeholders towards the improvement in hygiene. Make sense? Yeah. So then the other one is the prevalence and factors associated with malnutrition among children. So every time you have a topic that has the word prevalence, prevalence is already an objective on its own. So you should be very careful if what you're studying, you can actually study the prevalence, because in most cases, prevalence is studied using secondary data. You're not going to ask people that, what is your prevalence? No, you're going to study it with secondary data. I have seen so many people who set topics. The topic is performance associated with, for example, malnutrition. And then in their objectives, there is prevalence. Please don't do that. If you want to put prevalence among your objectives, make sure it is in the topic. Yeah. So I think with that, we can end today's section. But as a recap, writing a research topic is where your research starts and it is where your research ends. If you mess up your research topic, you're not going to be able to get good objectives. You're not going to be able to get good research questions. You're going to get bad hypotheses. You're going to get a bad literature review. You're going to make a bad data collection tool, your questionnaires and interview guides, and you're generally going to have a bad research. So please make sure that you get a very good topic. Some people who don't know how to set topics are going to set topics, and then when you reach the data analysis part, you cannot do data analysis because the variables that you have cannot be linked with each other. And that is what they always tell you when you go for defense, that please change your topic because the topic that you have written here cannot be done. Okay. So I also want to talk a little bit about our live online course training. We have organized for you an online course. And this online course is a live online course. It is not recorded. It is live, and someone is teaching as you are listening and doing what they're saying and what they're doing. So in this topic, we are going to cover topic formulation, like what we have done, but we shall do it in more depth. We shall do background writing. I'll show you how to write a background of your study. So there are many types of backgrounds, one which is funnel shape, and then the other one where we follow the contextual, conceptual, historical, and all that kind of background writing. I'm going to show you how we write a problem statement in a very good and professional way, the different contents of a problem statement. I'll also show you that. I'm going to show you how to draw your conceptual framework, come up with a theoretical framework, and get the best theoretical framework depending on the topic that you have. I'll also go ahead and show you how to write the significance and justification section and the scope of your study. Then the next chapter, which involves literature review, where it involves theoretical and empirical review of literature, I'm going to also show you how that is done. I'm also going to show you how we use artificial intelligence to improve on what we have done. We don't use artificial intelligence to do for us our literature review, but it helps us to just improve how we do it. And it also helps in saving time. But of course, you have to have the literature first, then it will improve it. And then next, I'll teach you how to do a methodology. In this methodology, we shall study research designs, sampling styles, ethical considerations, data quality controls, that is reliability and validity, analysis plans, how you're going to analyze your data. Are you going to do correlations? Are you going to do regressions? How you're going to do descriptives, whether you're going to use bar graphs, line graphs, or scatter plots. We're all going to discuss those in this topic. And then I'll show you how to develop a data collection tool. This could be your questionnaire. It could be your interview guide. It could be focus group discussions. We are going to learn how to develop these documents very well. And then I'm going to show you how we write preliminary pages like acknowledgements, declaration, consent forms, work plans, the budgets, all included there. And then lastly, I'll show you how we do professional formatting. Professional formatting, things like numbering, spacing, the fonting, how we include lists of tables, automatic table of contents, lists of figures, and how we structure this document to look professional and acceptable by your research committee. So this is a topic, this is a session that none of you should really miss, because we are going to do all this in 7 days. And as we take this course, the host is always with you. You're able to ask questions, be answered. What you've done is reviewed, and then we discuss together on a one-on-one basis. I think this is the best way in which you can learn how to do these things yourself. So it is nice to learn to do these things yourself than to just give them to another person to do them for you, because every time the supervisor puts an amendment, you do not know exactly what to do. You have to call the other person such that they can help you out. But if you learn to do it yourself, everything is going to be on spot. So thank you very much for attending this session. If you have any questions, anything that you want us to change, anything that you want us to do better, please don't hesitate to comment. I'm going to send the link of this video in the group, and for those who did not manage to attend it here on Zoom, they can just go ahead and see it in our link. So next week, we shall be covering how to write a background of the study in the free session. But those ones who want to go for the paid online course, for now, it is still going for $100, where we are going to cover all those things, and it is going to happen next week. So we are starting on the 22nd up to the 28th. So if you want to be a part of this class, please come and join, be together with us. We shall discuss your specific topic, discuss how you're going to improve your objectives, your research, methodologies, and everything, and we'll have a good topic. So thank you very much. See you there.